I get you want to testify how much you hate Donald Trump. But I'm quite certain Donald Trump was not running a fraudulent daycare center or a fraudulent autism center in Minnesota.
Standard of accountability.
So let me, sir, please do not interrupt me. Please do not.
Being clear.
Please do not interrupt. Possible that the officials sending millions of dollars to those fake daycare centers and fake autism centers didn't know what was going on.
What you're about to hear is one of the most explosive exchanges from this Senate hearing. Senator Ted Cruz presses witnesses with one simple question: if billions of taxpayer dollars were lost to fraud, who knew about it, and why wasn't anyone held accountable? As the testimony unfolds, Cruz refuses to let the witnesses dodge the issue, demanding answers about alleged fraud involving childcare centers, autism programs, and taxpayer funds. Watch this heated confrontation and decide for yourself whether the people responsible should finally be held accountable.
Affirmatively, you can have a seat, and I hope your opening statements were truthful. I should have done that before your opening statements, but I guess we'll have to take your word for it. Representative Robbins, let's start with you. How broad was the fraud that was perpetrated in Minnesota?
We are still getting a handle on it, but it's all of the, not all of, but a huge segment of the childcare programs, autism services, sober homes, emergency transportation, of 14 areas of Medicaid fraud, SNAP benefits. We are still, I would say, getting whistleblower reports, uncovering new vectors of fraud. We just discovered the adult day services and the assisted living. Those haven't been counted in the total so far. So I believe it's much broader than we currently know, and we will continue to expose it.
Is there any chance the elected Democrats in charge of the state were unaware of the fraud?
No. There have been credible whistleblower allegations, press reports, and Office of Legislative Auditor reports for many years.
Mr. Hoke, I want to thank you for your citizen journalism and your hard work pressing for accountability here. I will say I watched the video that you did with rapt attention. It was profoundly effective. It was also, by the way, an indictment of all of the so-called journalists on the national level, because none of them could be bothered to actually go and investigate. I want to ask you the same questions I asked Representative Robbins. Number one, how broad do you believe the evidence shows the fraud in Minnesota was?
It's easily in excess of $30 billion when you take everything into account. You've got all of these NGOs, you've got nonprofits, you've got county money, you've got city money, you've got CCAP money, you've got another thing called Great Start. So there are all these piles of money that factor into the fraud. I don't know that anybody can ever determine an exact number, but I kept telling the U.S. attorney when he came out, I said, you got to get your number up, you got to get your number up, and he did. He kept ratcheting up the number, and I kept saying, you got to be at least at $30 billion. So going back to whether Governor Walz knew about it, Governor Walz admitted knowing about the fraud early in his first term, which would say 2020. Well, Minnesota Statute 3.971, Subdivision 9, clearly says that if you are made aware of fraud in a state agency, you are obligated to immediately report that fraud to the Office of the Legislative Auditor. Immediately. The Legislative Auditor is then the body that determines which law enforcement agency to bring into the investigation. Governor Walz did not contact the Office of the Legislative Auditor. He said he contacted the FBI about what? That's not what the law says.
How many organizations receiving taxpayer funds did you visit in total?
How many?
How many organizations or ostensible organizations?
Companies, 200.
Of the child care centers you visited, how many kids did you see?
The only place that I saw children was at KinderCare and New Horizons, which are, in my opinion, legitimate. They're large scale. They have play areas. And they also receive CCAP money, but they're the only places that I saw where there were children present, ever, at any of them.
How about the autism centers? Did you see children? Did you see patients there?
Never. So that's not to say there weren't any, but there were never any there. When I was there, never any footprints in the snow, same thing.
Mr. Weissman, you're co-president of Public Citizen, which describes itself as a consumer advocate and a pro-democracy organization. Would you agree that the fraud in Minnesota was staggering and shocking?
I agree that there is fraud in Minnesota. I don't believe these estimates are grounded in any evidence that I've seen. The $9 billion figure was based on a claim just that, well, I think that half of them must be fraudulent. I just heard a comment just saying, boost the number up. But to be clear, and with respect, you missed my testimony. No question there's fraud in Minnesota, and absolutely I share your righteous anger about whatever degree of fraud there was there.
Do you agree that any Democrat politician, or let me be clear, any Republican politician that had knowledge of the fraud and was complicit should be prosecuted?
I'm not sure what they're being prosecuted for, but also in my testimony, I described also outside of Minnesota the manifold ways that this administration is enabling fraud.
Look, I understand.
Oh,
and the reason, hold on.
The standard is that you want
Sir,
to prosecute
I'm going to
people.
ask a question, and then you can answer it.
Yes, sir.
Your organization describes itself as a pro-democracy organization. I'm going to
Correct.
try to find out if you actually are pro-democracy or if you're simply pro-Democrat and are a partisan. We've seen the Democrats who want to change the topic. So I get you want to testify how much you hate Donald Trump. But I'm quite certain Donald Trump was not running a fraudulent daycare center or a fraudulent autism center in Minnesota. So all of the talking points about how you dislike Trump, set them aside. We will see the Democrats on this committee go down those talking points. Do you believe elected politicians in Minnesota who were aware of this fraud and were complicit in it should be prosecuted? Should there be accountability?
There absolutely should be accountability. It is not normal to prosecute government officials for not prosecuting fraud. That is not a standard I'm aware of that you've advocated or that anyone else has advocated in the Senate.
So do you think it's perfectly okay?
I did not say
If let's say Governor Walz or Attorney General Ellison knew about the fraud, benefited from the fraud in terms of bundling votes, benefited from the frauds in terms of collecting campaign finance violations, and deliberately looked the other way. You think that's not criminal conduct?
In that hypothetical, it is not okay. 100% not okay. But also, if you'll permit me, that hypothetical is in fact happening throughout.
Okay, yes, I get it. You dislike Trump. I understand you dislike Trump,
sir. It is whether I have a standard of accountability.
So let me, sir, please do not interrupt me. Please do not.
Being clear.
Please do not interrupt me. Please do not interrupt me.
Sir.
You may answer questions after I ask them. You've heard the evidence and testimony about daycare centers with no children, with no toys, with no facilities, with windows that are blacked out. Do you believe it is possible that the officials sending millions of dollars to those fake daycare centers and fake autism centers didn't know what was going on?
Well, what I heard was claims about that, and I too have watched the video. We're both parents. I'm glad that the child care centers don't open their door for someone who's knocking there. I don't view that as evidence that the child care centers are fake child care centers, although I'm sure there are some. My understanding is that state investigators have gone to do their duty at those exact same child centers and have found that most of them actually are operating correctly.
Well, I will say it is disappointing that you had a chance leading a nonprofit that is supposedly pro-democracy to take a principled stand. Instead, you decided to defend the Somali fraudsters because it benefits elected Democrats. That's disappointing. But you know what? I'm going to give you something you're going to like, an opportunity to say all the ways you dislike President Trump, because I'm going to recognize the ranking member who will surely ask you why Trump is terrible and do everything you and he can do to change the topic from the actual topic of this hearing. Ranking member Whitehouse.
Before we get to that, I don't want to leave what seemed to be a pretty flagrant mischaracterization of your testimony without an opportunity for you to address that mischaracterization, if you would care to begin with that.
Appreciate that. Just briefly, I was disagreeing with the premise of the question that we have been displayed this evidence showing criminal wrongdoing. Obviously, where there is criminal wrongdoing, and I testified to this, I support aggressive investigation and prosecution. To the degree there is wrongdoing in Minnesota, it should be aggressively investigated and prosecuted. I'm not sure that the claim that all the evidence we've been presented today is in fact evidence of that, but I don't deny it for a moment that it is occurring in Minnesota.
Let me ask.
What stood out to me most in this hearing was Senator Ted Cruz's determination to keep the focus exactly where he believed it belonged, on accountability. As I listened to the testimony, one question kept coming back: if taxpayer dollars were allegedly flowing to fraudulent childcare centers and autism programs, who knew about it, and why wasn't it stopped? I heard testimony claiming that investigators are still uncovering new areas of suspected fraud and that the total losses could be far greater than originally believed. I also heard claims that whistleblowers have been raising concerns for years. That immediately raised another question in my mind: if warnings existed, why wasn't stronger action taken sooner? As the hearing continued, Senator Cruz challenged a witness who questioned the scale of the allegations. Instead of allowing the conversation to move away from Minnesota, Cruz repeatedly brought it back to a simple issue: if any public official knowingly ignored fraud or benefited from it, should that person be held accountable? The exchange quickly became one of the most intense moments of the hearing. Cruz wasn't satisfied with general answers. He continued pressing for direct responses, arguing that the American people deserve transparency whenever taxpayer money is involved. No matter where you stand politically, I think everyone can agree on one thing: public funds should reach the people they're intended to help, and credible allegations of fraud deserve a full investigation. As this case continues to develop, more evidence will likely emerge, and Americans will be watching closely to see what investigators ultimately find. If you enjoy watching the biggest moments from Congress without the media spin, you're in the right place. Subscribe to America Brief, give this video a thumbs up, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next major hearing. And let me know in the comments, do you think Senator Ted Cruz asked the questions Americans wanted answered?